I never imagined my marriage would become a battlefield of silent tears. I thought love meant forever safety and loyalty, but nothing prepares you for the moment you realize your husband's heart is no longer only yours. I saw it in his eyes first, a distanced, a shadow I could not name. Then the truth came crashing down. I was not his only world anymore. I was forced to share him, and that pain nearly broke me. When I first met my husband, I thought I had found everything I had ever prayed for. He was kind, gentle, and his smile made me feel like the world was finally safe. We met in the most ordinary way, through mutual friends at a quiet gathering, nothing fancy, nothing forced. But that night, when his eyes met mine across the room, it was as if the noise around us disappeared. At first, it was only small talk, about books we both liked, about music that made us feel alive. But something about him pulled me closer with every word. By the time the evening ended, I knew deep down he wasn't just another man in the room, he was someone different. The days that followed felt like a dream. He would call me in the mornings just to ask if I had slept well. He would send me little notes, things like thinking of you, or hope you smiled today. It may sound simple, but those little gestures made my heart believe. I was the luckiest woman alive. We built our relationship slowly, carefully. No rush, no heavy promises at first. Just two souls who wanted to know every corner of each other's world. I remember our long walks, the way he listened without judgment, the way he made me laugh when life felt heavy. Soon, the bond between us grew deeper than I had ever known with anyone before. He became my safe place, the one I could call when I was scared, the one who held me when I felt weak. He wasn't perfect, but he was present, and in a world full of broken promises that meant everything to me. When he asked me to marry him, it felt like a fairy tale, not because of the ring or the setting, but because of the look in his eyes. It was a look that said, "You are my forever." And I believed him with every beat of my heart. Our wedding was small, intimate, surrounded by family and close friends. I wore a simple white dress, and he couldn't take his eyes off me. We laughed more than we cried, and when we said our vows, I felt a kind of peace I had never known before. That day, I thought my story was complete. I had found my happily ever after. The first years of our marriage were beautiful. We cooked together. We decorated our small apartment with pieces of our dreams. We would stay up late watching movies or just talking about our future. He made me coffee in the mornings and kissed my forehead before leaving for work. It was ordinary, but to me it was extraordinary. I believed we were unshakable. I believed no storm could tear us apart. But looking back now, I realized the cracks were already there, small, almost invisible. But there were moments when he would grow distant, moments when I would catch him lost in thought, staring at nothing, as if he was somewhere else. When I asked, he would smile, kiss my hand, and say, "Just tired, love, nothing more." And I wanted to believe him, so I did. Sometimes he would come home later than usual. He always had reasons, extra work, helping a colleague, a traffic delay. And I trusted him because trust was the foundation of everything we built. But trust, when given blindly, can also become a weakness. I remember one night in particular. I had prepared his favorite meal, lit candles, wore the dress he once said made me look like his dream. I wanted to surprise him, to remind him of us. But he came home distracted, his phone buzzing constantly, his laughter forced. When I touched his arm, he flinched, just slightly, but enough for me to notice. It hurt, more than I admitted to myself. But I brushed it off, told myself marriage has seasons, some bright, some heavy. And this was just a passing cloud. Yet deep down, something felt different, like a shadow creeping into the light we had built together. I didn't want to name it because naming it meant facing it, and I wasn't ready, not yet. Still, the unease grew. In small silences, in the way he avoided my eyes sometimes, in the way his laughter no longer reached me the way it used to, in the way I began to feel like I was sharing pieces of him with someone or something unseen. I told myself I was imagining things, that maybe I was overthinking, but my heart whispered otherwise. And sometimes the heart sees truths the mind refuses to accept. That night, as I lay beside him in bed, listening to his steady breathing, I stared at the ceiling, my chest heavy with questions, and in the silence, I felt it for the first time clearly. Something between us was about to break. The days after that uneasy night felt strangely heavy. I went through my routine, cooking, cleaning, smiling when I had to, but inside, I carried an invisible weight. It wasn't anger, not yet, it was fear. The fear that maybe my perfect life wasn't as perfect as I had believed. I tried to shake it off. I told myself marriages go through phases. Everyone says that, but my heart refused to rest. It kept whispering something isn't right. I watched him more closely, not because I wanted to spy, but because I wanted reassurance. I wanted to see something, anything, that proved my doubts were just insecurities. And at times, he gave me that. A gentle smile, a thoughtful touch, the sound of his laughter when we watched a silly movie. Those moments kept me holding on. But then there were other moments. when he would check his phone too quickly, when he would turn away to take a call, when his messages made him smirk in a way he never explained. I told myself, don't be paranoid, don't ruin what you have with wild thoughts. But the cracks in my peace grew wider. I remember one Sunday afternoon. We were at his mother's house, surrounded by family. Everyone laughed and shared stories over tea, but I noticed him again, quiet, distracted. When I touched his knee under the table, he smiled faintly, but his eyes, they weren't here. They were somewhere else. His mother, sweet and proud, kept praising our marriage. She told everyone how lucky I was to have a husband like him, how he was a good man, hardworking, loyal. And I smiled, because what else could I do? But inside, her words cut me, because in that moment, I realized I wasn't sure anymore if her picture of him matched the man I went home with every night. I began questioning myself. Was I enough? Was I too quiet, too ordinary, too predictable? Did he look at me and wish for more? Love is supposed to be a safe place, but slowly my love was becoming a mirror of my insecurities. Still, I held on. I cooked his favorite meals. I wore the perfume he liked. I tried to create little sparks in the silence. Sometimes he responded. Other times he seemed far away, even while sitting right beside me. The hardest part was that I couldn't talk to anyone. How could I? Our friends admired us. Our families believed we were perfect. If I told them my doubts, they would either laugh at me or pity me, and both felt unbearable. So, I kept it inside, smiling on the outside, breaking quietly on the inside. I told myself it was just a rough patch, that love would win, that he would come back to me fully. But deep down, I felt the storm coming closer. One evening, I decided to test the waters. We were sitting together after dinner, the TV playing softly in the background. I asked him gently, "Are you happy with me?" He looked at me surprised, almost too surprised. Then he laughed, pulled me close, kissed my forehead. "Of course I'm happy, don't be silly." I smiled, but his eyes, they told a different story. They carried something I couldn't name, something heavy. And in that moment, I knew he was hiding something. Days passed, weeks even. The unease became part of me, like a shadow I couldn't shake. I tried to distract myself with work, with chores, with little hobbies. But every night when he turned away in bed, it reminded me. The distance between us was no longer imagined, it was real. I started dreaming of our early days, of the way he used to hold my hand as if it was the most precious thing in the world, of the way he used to wait for me outside my office, smiling as if I was his only home. Those memories became my comfort, but also my torture, because they reminded me of what we once were and what we were no longer. One night, as I was folding laundry, his phone buzzed on the table. I froze. It was a name I didn't recognize, a woman's name. My heart raced. I told myself it could be a colleague, a friend, someone harmless. But my body reacted with a pain so sharp, it was as if my heart already knew. I didn't touch the phone. I couldn't. Instead, I walked away, my hands trembling. When he came out of the shower, he picked up his phone immediately, his fingers moving quickly, his eyes serious. I watched quietly from the doorway, and for the first time, I felt like an outsider in my own marriage. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment in my head. The laughter, the silences, the excuses, the phone calls. And it all formed one terrifying truth. Something was happening, something I wasn't ready to face. But life has a way of revealing truths, whether we are ready or not. And I felt it coming closer, like a whisper growing louder, like a door slowly opening. The world I had built so carefully, the love I had believed in so blindly, was about to shatter. The following week felt like walking on broken glass. Every smile I gave him, every question I asked, was careful, measured, afraid of the answers I might receive. He seemed different, not cruel, not distant in an obvious way, but softer with his words, as if covering something. And his kindness, instead of comforting me, frightened me, because it felt less like love and more like guilt. I told myself maybe I was imagining it all. Maybe my own fears were twisting reality. But late at night, when silence filled the room, I could hear his sighs, the heavy kind, the kind that hides secrets. One afternoon, he told me he had to work late. I nodded, pretending not to notice that his shirt was freshly ironed, his cologne stronger than usual. I tried to believe him, but my stomach churned with unease. Hours passed. I waited by the window. Every sound outside made my heart leap. When he finally returned past midnight, he looked startled to see me still awake. "Why are you up?" he asked quickly. I forced a smile. I couldn't sleep. He kissed my forehead, said he was tired, and went straight to bed. But as he walked away, I noticed something, a faint trace of lipstick, not mine. I wanted to scream, to cry, to demand the truth, but my voice refused to leave my throat. I just stood there, frozen, my world spinning. The next morning, I pretended nothing happened. I made breakfast, smiled when he kissed my cheek, but inside, I was unraveling. Every touch felt like a lie, every word felt like poison. And yet, I couldn't let go. Because love, even when broken, clings desperately to hope. I thought of talking to someone, and my sister, a close friend, but fear silenced me. What if I was wrong? What if I was overthinking? What if by speaking it, I gave life to something that wasn't real? So, I carried it alone, like a hidden wound, bleeding quietly beneath the surface. But the signs grew louder. Missed calls, secretive texts, long showers, nights spent, working late. Each lie carved deeper into me. And yet, I stayed silent, because I wasn't ready, not yet, to face the truth. Then came the dinner party. We were invited by his colleague, a fancy event filled with laughter, lights, and polished conversations. I dressed carefully, hoping for one night of normalcy, hoping to remember what it felt like to be his partner, not his suspicion-filled shadow. At first, it felt good. He held my hand, introduced me proudly, we smiled for photos. I almost believed maybe I was wrong, maybe everything was fine. But then, I saw it, the way his eyes lingered on another woman. Not just a glance, but a gaze that held too long. The way she laughed at his jokes, touched his arm, and the way he didn't pull away. My heart dropped. I excused myself to the restroom, staring at my reflection. My face smiled, but my eyes betrayed the storm inside. I whispered to myself, "Hold it together, just hold it together." When we returned home that night, silence filled the car. I wanted to ask, I wanted to scream, but the words tangled in my throat. Instead, I looked out the window, tears burning my eyes. That night, as I lay beside him, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't losing him. I had already lost him. And the only thing left was waiting for the truth to be revealed. The next morning, he left early, too early. I stood by the window, watching him walk away. And in that moment, I knew the life I thought I had was crumbling piece by piece. I didn't have proof, not yet. But proof wasn't necessary anymore. Because my heart, my body, my soul, they already knew. The pain of loving someone who belongs elsewhere is a pain that has no words. It eats you quietly, slowly, until you are a shadow of yourself. I told myself, something is about to break. And when it does, nothing will ever be the same again. The days after the party were heavy. Every moment with him felt like balancing on a thread. One wrong step, and everything would collapse. He spoke less, smiled less. And when he did smile, it felt like the kind of smile you give a stranger, polite, empty, hollow. At night, when he thought I was asleep, I could feel him scrolling on his phone. The faint glow of the screen burned into my closed eyes. Every vibration, every soft click was a dagger in my chest. I wanted to snatch the phone from his hand, demand answers. But fear chained me. Because what if I was right? What if the truth broke me beyond repair? So I played my role. The loyal wife, the patient partner, the silent observer. I cooked his meals, ironed his shirts, asked about his day. All while my heart screamed in silence. Sometimes, I caught him watching me, not with love, not with desire, but with guilt. A look that said, I know I'm hurting you, but I can't stop. It was unbearable. Living with someone yet feeling utterly alone. Sharing the same bed, yet knowing his soul belonged elsewhere. One evening my sister visited. She laughed, she chatted, she asked about us. I forced a smile, told her everything was fine, but she wasn't convinced. Your eyes, she said softly. They looked tired, broken. I brushed it off, changed the subject. But inside, her words lingered, because they were true. I was breaking piece by piece, and nobody knew. Then came the call, a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but something inside told me to answer. A woman's voice, calm, steady, yet filled with something sharp. Is this his wife? She asked. My blood froze, my lips trembled. Yes, I whispered. There was silence, then a quiet laugh. I just thought you should know he's not yours alone. The line went dead, but her words echoed endlessly in my mind. I dropped the phone, my hands shaking violently. My world tilted, the walls closed in. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, because confirmation had finally come. I waited for him that night, my heart pounding with dread and rage. When he walked in whistling softly, as if nothing was wrong, I stared at him. He noticed, paused, then forced a smile. What's wrong? He asked. I wanted to scream, throw the truth in his face. But instead, I whispered, nothing. Because the time wasn't right, not yet. If I confronted him now, he could lie, twist the story, make me doubt myself again. But if I waited, watched, gathered strength, I could make him face everything he had tried to hide. That night, as he slept peacefully beside me, I stared at him, my tears soaking the pillow. This man I loved, trusted, gave my life to, had chosen to share himself with another. The pain was unbearable. But buried deep inside that pain, something else began to grow. Not anger alone, not sorrow alone, but a dangerous, trembling seed. The seed of revenge. I didn't ask for this war, but if it had been handed to me, then I would not walk away quietly. For the first time, I looked at him not as my husband, but as the man who had betrayed me, and I whispered to myself, something is about to break, and when it does, he will feel it too. The morning after that phone call, the world looked different. The sunlight felt colder, the air heavier, every sound sharper, crueler. I kept replaying her words in my head. He's not yours alone. They rang like a curse, poisoning every corner of my mind. He sat at the breakfast table, scrolling through his phone, smiling faintly at something unseen. I watched him carefully, every flick of his thumb, every twitch of his lips. And suddenly, I hated that smile. I hated that he could sit there, pretending, while my chest burned with questions. I wanted to snatch the phone, smash it, demand the truth. But instead, I asked softly, "Who are you texting?" He froze for just a second, barely noticeable, but I caught it. Then he shrugged. "Just a colleague. Work things." The lie rolled off his tongue so easily, as if he had rehearsed it. Something inside me shattered. The man I loved, trusted, built my life around, was standing before me, a stranger. I sipped my tea to hide the tremble in my hands. But my heart whispered, he's lying. And you know it. That day I couldn't focus on anything. Not chores, not conversations, not even myself. My mind kept drifting to him and her. Who was she? How long had this been going on? Was I blind? Or did I choose not to see? By evening, my chest felt like it was caving in. I went into his study, careful, quiet, and there, on the desk, his laptop glowed. Unlocked. A temptation. A trap. A door I was both desperate and terrified to open. I sat down, my hands trembling, my pulse racing. One click, another, and there it was. Messages. Dozens of them. Her name flashing across the screen like fire. Her words were sweet, intimate, shameless. "Last night was perfect. I can still feel you with me. When will you tell her?" Tears blurred my vision, but I kept reading. Every sentence stabbed deeper. Every confession a nail in the coffin of my trust. And then photos. Their smiles. Their touches. Their stolen moments captured in secret. Proof. Unshakable. Undeniable proof. I shut the laptop slowly, my body trembling like a leaf in the wind. My world collapsed in that instant, and I realized my marriage had been a lie. When he came home, I said nothing. I cooked dinner, set the table, listened to him talk about his day. All the while my chest screamed, liar, cheater, betrayer. That night, as he slept soundly beside me, I stared at his face. So peaceful, so undeserving. And in that silence between the ache and the rage, something was born. A seed. A dark, dangerous seed. I whispered to myself, "You broke me, now I'll break you." From that night on, everything changed. My pain became my mask. My silence became my weapon. I smiled when he spoke. I laughed when he lied. But behind my eyes, I was plotting. The seed of revenge had taken root. And though I didn't know how, I knew one thing for certain: he would pay. The days after my discovery felt unreal, like I was walking through a nightmare I couldn't wake from. Every smile he gave me felt like poison. Every touch burned my skin. And yet, I pretended. I became an actress in my own home, wearing the mask of a faithful wife, while inside, I was crumbling. At night, I cried silently into my pillow, biting the sheets, so he wouldn't hear. By day, I went through the motions, cooking, cleaning, laughing on cue. But underneath it all, I was suffocating. I told myself maybe I was wrong, maybe I misunderstood. Maybe those messages weren't what they seemed. But then, his phone would buzz late at night. His smile would linger too long on a notification, and denial melted back into rage. The more I observed him, the clearer it became. He was not mine anymore. His body lay beside me, but his heart, his soul, belonged to another. One evening, as he showered, I stood in front of the mirror and studied myself. The reflection staring back was unfamiliar. Red eyes, hollow cheeks, lips pressed tight against secrets too heavy to carry. I asked the woman in the mirror, "What are you going to do?" The answer came like a whisper from my chest. "You're going to survive. And he's going to suffer." I started small. I began keeping records, screenshots of messages, copies of receipts, details from his calendar. Every clue, every breadcrumb. I collected like evidence for a trial only I knew existed. But collecting wasn't enough. The rage inside me demanded more. It wanted action. It wanted fire. I thought of confronting her, the other woman, storming into her life, tearing down her lies, exposing her shame. But another thought stopped me. Why should she get the satisfaction of knowing she mattered enough to break me? No. The one who betrayed vows, the one who promised me forever, was him. And he deserved the punishment. The first time I tested my power, it was almost accidental. He left his phone on the table, and when he stepped away, I changed her contact name from Anna to bank loan officer. When he returned, he didn't notice. Later that night, when her message came through, I watched him fumble, delete, and hide. Panic flickered across his face, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of satisfaction. That spark grew. I realized the game was shifting. I was no longer the victim. I was the silent hunter, and he had no idea. Still, the risk haunted me. What if he discovered I knew? What if someone found out what I was planning? The thought kept me awake at night, my heart racing in the dark. I imagined whispers spreading, fingers pointing, friends asking, was it her? Did she do this? And yet, fear didn't stop me. It only sharpened my focus. I began laying traps in my mind. What if I exposed him at work? What if I sent the photos to his family? What if I let the whole world see the man behind the mask? Each scenario played like a movie in my head, thrilling, terrifying, intoxicating. But revenge, I learned, is not born overnight. It festers. It grows in silence. It sharpens itself against your grief. One night, lying awake, I whispered into the darkness, "You think you've fooled me, but I've already won." Because in that moment, I realized something powerful. He thought he was living two lives, but only I held the script to both. And when the curtain fell, he would not see it coming. The chaos of betrayal had nearly drowned me, but now I was swimming in deeper waters, and the current was pulling me toward revenge. The plan began in whispers, tiny seeds of thought that sprouted into dangerous ideas. Every morning, as he kissed my cheek before leaving for work, I imagined the kiss turning to ash in his mouth when my truth struck. Every night, as he texted her from the bathroom, I rehearsed the lines I would one day throw back at him, words sharp enough to cut the silence that had chained me for months. But planning revenge was not as simple as anger demanded. It was a puzzle. Every piece had to fit, every move had to be masked by the ordinary. I started with her name, her face, her habits. Through the fragments of his carelessness, I built a portrait of the woman who had stolen his attention. I knew the coffee shop she visited, the days she was free, the way she signed her messages with a little heart. The more I learned, the more dangerous my knowledge became. And yet, the thrill was intoxicating. For weeks, I had been powerless. Now, I was the one holding the match near the gasoline. Still, a voice inside me whispered warnings. What if someone finds out it was you? What if he turns the blame on you? What if the world sees you as bitter, jealous, crazy? The voice was sharp, cruel, but I silenced it by reminding myself, he broke the vows. He made the choice, and choices have consequences. I began small, subtle disruptions that made him uneasy. I rearranged his papers, so he missed a meeting. I deleted an email that left him scrambling to explain himself to his boss. Watching him flustered, frustrated, paranoid, it was like tasting the first drop of revenge. And I wanted more, but the game was risky. Too much, and he might suspect me. Too little, and he would never feel the weight of my fury. I had to balance the mask of the dutiful wife with the shadow of the avenger. One afternoon, I sat across from him at dinner, watching him scroll his phone under the table. I leaned in and whispered softly, "Who are you smiling at?" He froze, then quickly forced a laugh. "No one, just a joke from work." But I saw it in his eyes, the flicker of fear, the suspicion that maybe, just maybe, I knew. That flicker kept me alive. It told me I was no longer invisible. I was no longer powerless. I was the storm on the horizon, and he could sense the first rumble of thunder. But revenge is not only about destruction. It is about patience. It is about making your enemy believe they are safe, right until the moment you strike. So I softened again. I cooked his favorite meals. I let him think the storm had passed. And all the while, I was building the fire higher. One night, while he slept, I sat in the glow of his phone screen. The messages between him and her glared at me like neon signs. Promises. Lies. Plans for a future that did not include me. My hands shook as I copied them. Each word became a weapon stored in my arsenal. Each lie became another thread in the trap I was weaving. The more I read, the darker my thoughts became. What if I printed them and left them on his boss's desk? What if I mailed them to his family? What if I showed the world who he really was? But even as I fantasized about exposure, another part of me wanted him to suffer more personally. Public shame could be survived. But private torment, the kind that eats at you in silence, that was the revenge I craved. I began rehearsing scenarios in my mind. The moment I would confront him, the words I would choose, the silence I would hold after his excuses collapsed into dust. At times, I felt powerful. At times, I felt sick. Because revenge is a poison you drink slowly, and it burns your throat before it ever touches the one you aim it at. But I couldn't stop. I wouldn't stop. I started imagining the final confrontation not just as justice, but as freedom. Freedom from the lies. Freedom from the constant ache of pretending. Freedom from the cage of silence I had been living in. And yet, beneath the fire, there was fear. Fear that I was becoming someone else. Fear that in chasing revenge, I was losing the woman I once was, the one who believed in love, in loyalty, in forever. But maybe that woman had already died the day I realized I was no longer enough for him. By the time the 3rd month passed, my plan had sharpened. I knew exactly when. I knew exactly how. All that remained was waiting for the perfect moment. And as I kissed him goodnight one last time, I whispered in my head, "Sleep well, my love. Your morning will never look the same again." The day I decided to act began like any other. Breakfast on the table. Coffee steaming. His phone buzzing just out of reach. But inside me, the storm had reached its peak. I could no longer hold back the tide of rage. It was time to let my first wave of revenge break against him. While he showered, I took his phone in my hands. My heart pounded like a drum. Every second felt like fire. I opened his messages, copied every thread with her, and sent them to myself. Then, I changed her contact name again. This time to wife. I knew what I was doing was dangerous. If he caught me, the game would end before it even began. But fate, it seemed, wanted me to succeed. He walked out of the bathroom humming, towel around his waist, oblivious. And I stood there, smiling sweetly, as if I hadn't just armed myself with a weapon sharp enough to slice his life apart. That night, when he went out for work drinks, I stayed home. I didn't cry. I didn't pace. I opened my laptop and began piecing together the evidence, screenshots, receipts, bank transfers. A digital map of his betrayal. It was beautiful, in its own cruel way. The next step was more daring. I printed the messages, stacked them neatly in an envelope, and slipped it into his briefcase while he slept. I wanted him to feel the shock of discovery, the same shock I had endured. When he opened his bag at work, when he saw his lies staring back at him in black and white, would his heart sink the way mine had? Would his hands tremble as mine had trembled? The thought kept me awake, trembling between terror and excitement. The next morning, I watched him leave with the briefcase. He kissed my forehead. I kissed him back. And as the door shut, I whispered to the empty house, "It begins." That day stretched endlessly. Every sound made me jump. Every silence made me ache. Would he call? Would he rush home, angry and demanding answers? Or would he stay quiet, hoping I hadn't been the one who planted the truth? When the phone finally rang, my breath caught. It wasn't him. It was a friend from the office, calling to say he had left early. No explanation. No smile in his voice. I smiled instead. The ripple had begun. He came home late, face pale, eyes restless. He didn't speak much. Didn't eat much. And when I asked softly, "Rough day?" he only nodded, forcing a smile that looked like a broken mask. Inside, I laughed. But outside, I stayed silent. Because silence is sometimes the sharpest blade. The next few days, his behavior shifted. He was quieter, more attentive. He brought me flowers for no reason, cooked dinner one night, and for a moment a small, cruel part of me enjoyed the irony. The man who had shared his heart with another was now crawling back, desperate to prove his loyalty. But I knew it wasn't love. It was fear. Fear of exposure. Fear that the woman he betrayed might now hold the power to destroy him. And he was right. The taste of power was addictive. I realized how fragile his world was, how easily it could be cracked with one push. And I wasn't done pushing. The second move came in whispers. I created a fake email address. From it, I sent his mistress a message, cryptic, sharp. "He isn't who you think he is. Watch closely. You'll see." I didn't sign it. I didn't need to. The seed of doubt was planted. Days later, I saw the change in him again. His phone buzzed less. His laughter faded. And one night, I overheard him mutter angrily on the phone, "No, you're imagining things she doesn't know she couldn't know." I smiled in the dark. Two hearts in chaos, and both of them unaware that I was the hand pulling the strings. But with each act of revenge, the danger grew sharper. If he discovered I was behind it all, what would he do? If she traced the message back to me, what then? The risk was real. The fear was real. And yet, the thrill outweighed it. Because after so long drowning in betrayal, I had finally become the storm. The first moves had been small, subtle ripples. But I knew bigger waves were coming. I wanted him not just afraid. I wanted him shattered. I wanted him to look at me and see the reflection of his sins staring back. And as I lay in bed beside him, listening to his restless breathing, I whispered in my heart, "This is only the beginning. You thought you could break me, but it's my turn now." The house felt colder that night. Not because of the weather, but because of the silence between us. He sat at the dining table, pretending to read the newspaper. I sat opposite him, pretending to scroll my phone. But both of us knew the ground beneath us was cracking. I watched him closely. His hands trembled slightly as he turned the page. His eyes flickered nervously, avoiding mine. That small detail told me everything. He knew something was coming. He just didn't know when. And I was ready to show him. "Do you love me?" I asked suddenly. My voice was steady, too steady. He looked up, startled. "Of course," he said quickly. "Why would you ask that?" "Because..." I leaned forward, locking eyes with him. "Men who love their wives don't spend nights in other women's beds." His face went pale. The paper slipped from his hands. What are you talking about?" I pulled out the printed messages, the ones I had hidden in a drawer for weeks. I placed them on the table between us. One by one, I spread them like cards in a cruel game. Every "I miss you." Every "she doesn't know." Every lie he thought was safe in the shadows. He froze. His lips parted, but no words came. "Say something," I whispered. But my whisper was sharper than any scream. Finally he spoke. "It's not what it looks like." A bitter laugh escaped me. "Then explain it. Because to me, it looks like you sold our marriage for cheap thrills. It looks like the man I trusted chose another woman over me. It looks like betrayal." He rubbed his face with his hands, groaning. "I made a mistake, just one mistake. One mistake." I snapped. "Do you call months of lies a mistake? Do you call breaking vows a mistake?" "No, it wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. Over and over again, you chose her." The weight of silence pressed against us again. He lowered his gaze, unable to meet mine. And in that moment, I saw him for what he was. Not the man I fell in love with. Not the husband I built dreams with. But a coward. A liar. A man too weak to face the wreckage he created. I stood. He looked up at me, panic flickering in his eyes. "What are you going to do?" he asked, his voice small. The question hung between us like smoke. What was I going to do? I leaned closer, my voice low and cutting. "I'm going to make sure you feel every ounce of the pain you gave me." He swallowed hard, his throat bobbing. "Please don't." But it was too late. The wheels of revenge had been turning for too long, and I had already prepared the stage. The next day, I hosted a family dinner. Our parents, our siblings, even his closest friends. Everyone he cared about, everyone whose opinion mattered to him, was under our roof. He didn't know my plan. He thought it was just a regular gathering. He smiled nervously, trying to play the role of the loving husband. But inside, I could see the cracks, the sweat on his brow, the unease in his laughter. And then it was time. I stood up, holding a glass of wine. "I want to make a toast," I said. Everyone turned to me, smiling, expecting words of gratitude, of love. But what they got was the truth. "I want to thank my husband," I began, my tone sweet but laced with venom, "for teaching me the meaning of betrayal, for showing me what it feels like to love someone who doesn't love you back, for reminding me that even the closest bonds can break." The room shifted. Confused glances, nervous chuckles. He froze in his seat, eyes wide. "Stop," he hissed under his breath. But I didn't stop. I lifted the printed messages, my weapon. "These," I said loudly, "are his love letters. Not to me, to her." Gasps filled the room. Chairs creaked as people leaned forward, eyes wide with shock. His mother covered her mouth. His brother muttered a curse. The room became a storm. And he sat there, face drained of blood, staring at the wreckage of his carefully crafted mask. "Do you deny it?" I asked, my voice steady. He stammered, but no words came. Silence was his answer. I let the papers fall onto the table, scattering like broken glass. Then I raised my glass again. "So, here's my toast. To the end of lies. To the truth finally breaking free. And to the man who thought I was too weak to fight back." I drank, the wine bitter on my tongue, but victory sweet in my veins. The room erupted, questions, whispers, judgment hanging heavy in the air. And him shrinking smaller with every second. That was the first strike of my final revenge. And it was only the beginning. The fallout from the dinner still lingered in the air the next morning. His family left in silence, ashamed, disappointed. My phone buzzed nonstop with messages, sympathy, shock, pity. And yet, none of it gave me peace. Revenge doesn't erase pain. It only spreads it. But I wasn't done. Not yet. I had one last truth to deliver. And this time, it wouldn't be whispered behind closed doors. It would be spoken directly to her. I waited until evening. He came home late, as usual, dragging the scent of guilt with him. He avoided my eyes as he kicked off his shoes. His shoulders sagged, his energy drained, like a man already condemned. "I invited her," I said simply. He froze mid-step. His head whipped toward me. "Who?" he asked, though he already knew. "Her," I repeated. The woman you've been hiding in shadows. The one who thought she could replace me. She'll be here tonight. His face blanched. You didn't. I did. My voice was calm, controlled. Too calm. And that terrified him more than any scream could. When the doorbell rang, the air itself seemed to tense. He looked at me, desperation in his eyes. Please don't do this, he begged. But I walked to the door, opened it, and there she was. Younger, beautiful, nervous. She stepped inside cautiously, clutching her purse like a shield. Her eyes darted around the room before settling on me. You must be, she began softly. Yes. I cut her off. The wife. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Behind me, he shifted uncomfortably, torn between two worlds, one he built, one he destroyed. Sit, I ordered. She hesitated, then obeyed, lowering herself onto the couch. I remained standing, towering over both of them. I know everything, I said. Every text, every secret meeting, every lie. She swallowed hard, guilt flashing across her face. But then something shifted. Her eyes hardened, her chin lifted. And she dared to speak. He told me you were cold, she said. He told me you didn't care anymore, that you stopped loving him. My chest tightened, but I didn't flinch. That's the story. He fed you to ease his guilt. A husband rewriting his marriage to make cheating easier. Tell me, did he ever tell you about the nights I stayed awake waiting for him? The tears I shed while he lied? Did he ever tell you that? Her silence was answer enough. She had been fed crumbs of falsehood, and she ate them like they were a feast. I turned to him. Is that what you told her? That I stopped loving you? He fumbled for words, stammering. I didn't mean it like that. Answer me. I snapped. The sharpness in my voice cut through the room. Finally, he broke. Yes. I said it. I didn't know how else to explain. I couldn't tell her the truth, that I was weak, that I betrayed the only person who ever truly cared about me. The room went silent. Every word hung heavy, raw, irreversible. I looked at her again. Do you see now? He lies to everyone. To me. To you. To himself. That's the man you wanted. Her face crumpled, shame replacing defiance. Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't mean to hurt you, she whispered. But you did. I replied coldly. You walked into my home the moment you touched him. You helped tear down what I built. And tonight, you'll both face the cost. I pulled out my phone, pressing a button. On the television screen, photos and messages appeared. Every proof I had collected. Every intimate word. Every secret meeting. The room filled with evidence neither of them could deny. He buried his face in his hands. She shook her head, covering her mouth in horror. Why are you doing this? She whispered. Because, I said slowly, I want you both to feel what I felt. The humiliation, the betrayal, the weight of truth pressing on your chest until you can't breathe. Tears streamed down her cheeks. He sat in silence, broken, crushed by the exposure. Finally, I delivered the last blow. You thought I would suffer in silence, that I would swallow the pain and pretend everything was fine. But tonight proves one thing. Never mistake silence for weakness. I am stronger than both of you. I walked toward the door, my head high, my voice steady. This marriage is over. And so is your fantasy. I left them sitting together. Two people who had thought they won, now drowning in shame side by side. The night air outside was cool against my skin. But inside, I burned with a fire I could no longer put out. And deep down, I knew the war wasn't just between me and them anymore. It was between me and the part of myself that still loved him. I thought leaving them on the couch, broken under the weight of their shame, would be enough. But the ache in my chest said otherwise. Humiliation wasn't enough. Tears weren't enough. I wanted him to lose what I lost. I wanted him to feel the sharp edge of emptiness. And so the final stage of my revenge began. The next morning, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Instead, I brewed coffee, dressed neatly, and left the house before he even stirred awake. He called me, but I ignored him. Every unanswered ring was a knife twisting deeper into his panic. I went to the bank first. Together, we had built accounts, savings, investments. Together, we had signed every paper, every contract. But now, together was over. I closed the joint account, transferring what was legally mine. The manager asked if I was sure. Yes, I said, my voice steady. Dead sure. By afternoon, I was at the lawyer's office. Divorce papers were drawn up. I signed without hesitation. No trembling hands. No lingering hope. Just ink on paper sealing the end. But the true revenge wasn't just walking away. It was what I left behind. That evening, I returned home. He stood waiting by the door, desperate, hollow-eyed. Please, he begged. We can fix this. Don't throw it all away. I dropped the envelope of papers on the table. This isn't me throwing it away. I replied coldly. This is you. You threw us away the moment you shared yourself with her. He reached for me, but I stepped back. Don't touch me, I snapped. Then I delivered the final blow. I told your boss. His face drained of color. What? I sent him everything. The texts, the photos, the evidence. The woman you risked your marriage for? She was also the client you weren't supposed to be mixing business with. I told him everything. By tomorrow, your career will be ash. His knees buckled slightly, as though my words had stolen the strength from his body. You ruined me, he whispered. No, I corrected. You ruined yourself. I just handed you the mirror. Tears glistened in his eyes, but I didn't soften. He had watched me drown silently for months. Now it was his turn to gasp for air. The sound of a car pulling up made us both turn. She stepped out, his mistress, face pale, eyes red from crying. She had come back, perhaps to beg for him, perhaps to cling to what little was left. When she entered, she looked between us, realizing instantly what had happened. You told them, didn't you? She whispered to him. Her voice trembled. My family knows. My job knows. Everyone knows. He tried to reach for her, but she recoiled. You said she would never find out, she accused. You said it would be our secret. Now my life is ruined too. I almost smiled. Secrets always rot in the dark. And now, their beautiful little secret had rotted into poison. You deserve each other, I said coldly. Sit in the rubble of what you built on lies. See how long it lasts when the world watches. Her tears fell freely now. She turned to him, voice sharp with rage. You lied to me too. You said you'd leave her. You said we had a future. And now I've lost everything for nothing. The words struck him harder than any slap. His shoulders sagged. His mouth opened, but no excuses came. For once, he had no words to hide behind. I picked up my bag, walking toward the door. Neither of them tried to stop me. They were too busy crumbling, their tower of deceit collapsing in real time. Before I stepped out, I turned one last time, and with a voice steady as stone, I said, now you'll feel what I felt. Alone. Betrayed. Empty. The door clicked shut behind me. The night swallowed me whole, but it didn't scare me anymore. For the first time in months, I felt powerful. Light. Free. As I walked away, I heard his voice faintly through the walls, desperate and broken. Her voice too, sharp with fury. Two people trapped in the fire they lit together. And I was done being burned. The silence that followed was deafening. For years, my life had been filled with his laughter, his voice, his presence in every room. Now it was just me. The house, once warm with the illusion of love, felt cavernous, empty like a body with no heartbeat. At first, I told myself I felt free. No more lies. No more competing with shadows. No more crying into pillows, waiting for him to come home. But freedom comes with its own weight. Because when the anger fades, what remains is the hollow echo of loss. I had won. He had lost everything, his career, his mistress, his marriage. And yet, in the quiet of the night, I found myself staring at the ceiling, asking, was it enough? Was revenge the healing I longed for? Sometimes I replayed the look on his face, the moment the truth crushed him. His eyes, filled with shame, with desperation. And for a fleeting moment, it satisfied me. Yes, he had felt what I felt, but satisfaction fades quickly. It's like fire. It burns hot, bright, and then disappears, leaving only smoke. And in that smoke, I found something I wasn't ready for. Loneliness. He no longer called. She no longer haunted me. It was quiet, too quiet. I was alone with my thoughts, my scars, my broken trust. The very things I thought revenge would erase still clung to me like shadows. I went to visit my mother one weekend. She looked at me carefully, her eyes searching for cracks. You did what you had to do, she said softly, squeezing my hand. But now you must live again. Live again. The words hit me like a stone, because I realized for months, maybe years, I had only been surviving. Breathing but not living. Existing but not growing. And revenge, as satisfying as it felt in the moment, was just another form of survival. I began to rebuild slowly. Mornings with coffee by the window, not waiting for anyone to join me. Walks in the park, watching families and couples, no longer aching as much. Small joys, music, books, conversations with friends I had once ignored while drowning in marriage. I found pieces of myself scattered in these moments. But scars do not vanish. Every time I saw a couple laughing together, my chest tightened. Every time I heard promises spoken in love stories, a whisper in my head said, promises break. Don't believe them. That's the cost of betrayal. It robs you not just of love, but of faith. Faith in people. Faith in forever. Faith in yourself. One night, I received a message. It was from him. Just 3 words. I am sorry. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't reply. What was there to say? Sorry cannot stitch wounds. Sorry cannot erase nights of doubt. Sorry cannot give back what was stolen. And yet a part of me pitied him, because in destroying me, he destroyed himself too. We were both left with nothing. Revenge had given me power, but it hadn't given me peace. Peace, I realized, doesn't come from watching someone else suffer. It comes from choosing not to carry their sins anymore. So I made a choice. Not to forgive. Forgiveness is too generous a gift for someone who shattered me. But to release. To let go of his shadow in my life. To stop replaying the betrayal like a broken record. To stop binding my worth to his mistakes. That was the beginning of healing. Not revenge. Not anger. But release. I began therapy. Spoke my truths out loud in a space where I was not judged. Slowly, the bitterness loosened its grip on me. Slowly, I began to believe that maybe love could exist again. Not the kind I had before, built on lies, but something real. And as I stood before the mirror one morning, I finally saw myself not as the woman he betrayed, but as the woman who survived. The woman who refused to stay silent. The woman who chose herself when no one else did. Yes, revenge had left scars. But it also lit a path. A path where I no longer waited for someone else to validate me. A path where my voice was mine again. A path where pain no longer defined me, strength did. Sometimes, in the quiet, I still hear echoes of the past. His laughter, her whispers, the sharp crack of my own heart breaking. But those echoes fade quicker now, because I have built new sounds around me. Music, laughter, stories, even silence that feels like peace, not emptiness. And so, if you ask me, did revenge satisfy you? My answer is complicated. It satisfied the anger, yes, but it did not heal the hurt. It gave me justice, but not joy. It burned away the illusion, but left ashes I had to clean alone. Revenge was not the end. It was only the turning point. The real ending was learning to live again. So now, I stand here, no longer his wife, no longer the betrayed woman, no longer the broken soul. I stand here as me. Scarred, yes, but alive and free. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to breathe with it. We share these confessions not just for entertainment, but because they remind us we are not alone in our struggles. If you've ever faced betrayal, heartbreak, or found strength in letting go, your story matters too. You're welcome to share thoughts in the comments. I do read them. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, subscribing is the easiest way to stay connected.